First one is a report from Axios, and Dave DeCamp has this written up at antiwar.com. And the report from Axios claims that Trump is going to slap sanctions on Iran every week until Joe Biden's inauguration. And so I guess part of the plan here would be to undermine any ability that Joe Biden would have to get back into the nuclear deal with Iran. Now, this is silly. I mean, in one sense, trying to undermine the incoming president's foreign policy, if that's the case, is I think a fairly reckless and disturbing move. But that may not be the entire goal. It may be more motivated just by trying to get some kind of victory before he's out of office. People are talking about him running again. Either way, whatever it is, it's still Iran is suffering from the COVID epidemic. They're apparently struggling to get insulin into the country because of the American sanctions. This is a population that's really, really suffering, and the U.S. should be rolling bad sanctions, not adding more. Now, the report says that Trump is coordinating with Israel. This is, I guess, the part of the report that makes me just a little bit skeptical of it, only because Benjamin Netanyahu came out and endorsed the Biden presidency, or his claim to victory, I guess, is the way it's being portrayed in the media. And you would think if Trump really is the narcissist, that he would, if anything, then do things to undermine Israel or something like that to get back at Netanyahu, not enforce a stricter policy on a country, and use some of his waning political capital on someone who no longer supports him. And so I'm a little bit skeptical of this story. However, the U.S. is apparently preparing a list of sanctions that will be announced later this week. Um, so at least one round of sanctions more is coming on the Iranian population that is already suffering and dying from U.S. sanctions. It's always interesting to me what gets talked about when you're the anti-Trump faction. And so often, they'll point to kind of little things, statements he made, stuff like that. But here you've had the U.S. wage maximum pressure campaigns against, war torn countries like Syria, destitute countries with, brutal dictatorships like North Korea, the failed socialist economy in Venezuela with Maduro, and then here the Iranian economy. And all these have just been devastated by sanctions. It's adding to the civilian suffering and deaths in all these countries. And, those lives are never talked about. And a lot of that is because that Biden is likely to continue most of these policies. Now, Iran may be one exception because, of course, his boss is the one that put together the nuclear deal. And so I'm somewhat optimistic that this actually does improve. But that said, I've seen some fairly important Democrats like Bob Menendez, who is a senator, pointing out that Iran would need to do work to get back into the nuclear deal. And since it was actually the U.S. under the Trump administration that broke it, if anything, it's the U.S. that needs to do some work to get back into that deal.